Hello everyone, how you doing? It's Jordan here. Now today we have got a review of Abyss of the Sacrifice, and this review was written by the lovely Katie Pajamas. Please go follow her on Twitter with the link in the description. She's lovely and you should follow her. So these are her words, not mine. What does she think of this Switch import? Since the Nintendo Switch's release, it's become more and more of a visual novel machine, with a mix of both new and ported visual novels from throughout the years being brought to the system's library. This has been even more true recently, with one such example being today's game, Abyss of the Sacrifice, an older visual novel / escape room combo that was originally released on the PlayStation Portable in 2010 in Japan only. Both Switch and PC received an updated re-release in 2020 that included an added hint function, updated graphics, touch controls for the Switch, and a gallery mode to view events and illustrations at any time outside the game. Currently there is no Western physical release for the Switch, but there is a Japanese release that can be imported, and it does have English on the cartridge, although all the voice acting is in Japanese only. It's also available digitally on the eShop for $40 or your regional equivalent. Developed by Intense, who from their history specialize in escape room, visual novel type games, and it is published by D3 Publisher. Let's take a look and see if it does a good job of combining puzzles and story into a cohesive experience. The story in this game focuses on 5 girls who all find themselves trapped alone in their underground city home of Foundation. They have no recollection about why they're alone or what happened, but they do know that the city is falling apart while they're still inside it, and they need to find a way out. Our 5 protagonists faced with this task are Olga, Mickey, Jikta, Asuna, and Chloe, and they must band together to find a way to escape Foundation by locating the mystical surface that old city legends speak of. Each girl has their own path that you can follow through the game's navigation menu, and these paths are divided into named segments that all follow the same structure of at least one puzzle and about 10 minutes or so of story and exposition. Depending on the path that you follow, you will receive one of many different endings. All the girls have their own ending, whereas one, who I can't reveal due to spoilers, has 2, both a bad and good ending, the latter of which is the final true ending of the game. Some of the paths do require you to replace certain segments to get to each ending, but the good news is that there is a skip function in the menu that will skip past all red text and will fully skip all puzzles you've previously solved. Speaking again of the puzzles, they're all treated the same as any classic escape room scenario in a game. You're given a static background with a cursor to move around on screen to investigate, pick up items, and observe some spots more closely. You can also hit the L and R buttons on the Switch for some locations to move to a different part of the room and investigate further. During these segments, you're always given the hint option in the main menu of the game, or you can press in the right thumbstick to pull up the hints immediately. These serve to point you in the right direction if you're stuck on a puzzle, with sometimes providing the answer for you and other times giving you a vague idea of what you're meant to be looking for. Some segments contain more than one puzzle, which are occasionally more in depth than others and require a lot more thinking than may be first apparent, so the amount of time you'll be spending in each segment will greatly vary. Our 5 main characters are each given their own initially mysterious personalities. Olga is the smart overachiever who's the most handy when it comes to medicine. Mickey is the former track star who's good at running, jumping, and solving puzzles. Jitka is the girl with no past who can't seem to stand up for herself or even stay awake. Asuna is the bossy but troubled wannabe leader, and Chloe is the ingenious hacker whose skill comes in handy when they're attempting to gather more information for how to get to the surface. Their storylines are explored more as you proceed further down their paths, outlining their backgrounds, furthering their character arcs, and the motivations behind their behavior. Some of the girls do seem to be given more background than others, but the balance did seem to try and be fairly equal in the end. I did find that some of the characters were very unlikable, whether intentional or not, and didn't seem to really have much time or story to redeem themselves. Since it's a visual novel that's broken into segments, the stories didn't necessarily seem to always connect, thus taking away any real time to see the girls establishing bonds or friendships. You're left to fill a lot of the gaps in for yourself, and this really doesn't give you a good opportunity to connect with them all that much. By the end of the game, I knew who the characters were, but I didn't really feel like I was attached to them as I could have been. This game does some things right and other things not so well. My biggest complaint is surrounding the puzzles. Some of them were very self-explanatory, with enough thought and looking around, are solved with some common sense and logic. As the game progresses, however, this changes. A good way to describe the puzzles from the mid-game and beyond is illogical and obtuse. They just pretty much stop making sense and seem to be thrown in just to give the player something difficult to solve, and sometimes, without a guide, seem to be impossible. I'll be the first to admit I had to use a YouTube guide to figure out several that the game didn't seem to provide any helpful guidance or hints towards. While I mentioned earlier that there are in-game hints and sometimes an explanation for how some of the puzzles are solved, it didn't seem to assist for more than a few, which almost seems to indicate that even the writer of the hints wasn't sure how to solve the puzzles. The game's story also possessed a few issues of its own. While the story is one of the stronger highlights of the game, it felt sometimes messy and disjointed. The segments don't feel connected. The character stories are sometimes broken up awkwardly, and it's hard to keep track of who's in a scene and how the segments even fit together. There's also a number of random story elements that are thrown in that only seem to serve as a one-time plot device and are never mentioned again, despite how much they could potentially change things. While this one does have some drawbacks in the story and structure, it does have some good elements to it when it comes to its music and background design. The music is done well and fits both with the setting and tone of the game. It doesn't seem jarring or irritating to listen to while solving puzzles and listening to the dialogue. Also, at times it was really unsettling, which for a game that you have no idea what's going on for a lot of the time, it was very fitting. The background, character and CG design were also up to par. The escape room segments themselves, puzzles aside, had a good structure behind them, and you are usually given clear indication about what can and cannot be interacted with. One thing I would change though is that the text was very difficult to read against certain backgrounds. Occasionally visual novels will have a setting that increases the opacity of the background behind the text to make it easier to read. Abyss doesn't have this feature and left me squinting to read the text against some of the brighter and more detailed backgrounds. Now, before I get into the conclusion, I just want to remind you that this game is available digitally on Steam and on the Switch, but it's also available physically in Japan and does play in English. If you want to pick that up, then I've put links below down in the description and pinned comment where you can find it. If you buy it, you also support us at the same time. That is, if it's in stock, of course. We're not monetized at the minute, so it's definitely the best way to support us. There's also eShop credit below too, if you want to go digitally. In conclusion, at the end of the day, I feel a bit indifferent towards the game. The puzzles made the game feel more like a slog to get through as opposed to adding a new element to keep one entertained. When comparing it to similar games in the genre, it's easy to see that it doesn't really match up all that much despite what it tries to do with the story. My personal recommendation, if you do choose to play, is go for the story and find a guide to keep handy during the more challenging puzzles that you'll inevitably come across. A 5 out of 10. And there we have it, guys. Many thanks to Katie Pajamas for taking on this brain buster for you. Please check out her previous review of Love Spell, and also remember, if you want to purchase this physically on the Switch, there are links below in the description. Thank you for watching this video. If you watched all the way through, thank you ever so much, and please check out some of our other stuff as well. We've got a lot of visual novel content for you guys.